This wasn't just hockey. It was a war, disguised as a sport. The 1970s NHL was chaos on ice. Bruises blooming under pads, broken sticks littering the rink, and blood mixing with ice shavings. Every game was a battle. Every shift a gamble between glory and pain. But inside that chaos, legends were being born. Players who fused violence with artistry, toughness with genius. They didn't just play, they survived and thrived, carving their names into frozen history. What you're about to see isn't just a list of players, it's a descent into the decade that redefined what it meant to be fearless. Because in the 1970s, hockey wasn't a sport, it was war with skates. Before we dive into the legends themselves, take a second, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your pick for the greatest NHL player of the 1970s. Was it the speed of Lafleur, the strength of Esposito, or the timeless power of Gordie Howe? Your answer might just show up in the next countdown, because this isn't just a list, it's a debate that still rages on frozen history. Now, let's drop the puck. Number 10, Ken Dryden, the philosopher in the crease. He stood motionless in the net, a towering figure wrapped in quiet. While others flinched, lunged, and sprawled, Ken Dryden simply waited, still, calm, watching. To opponents, it was unnerving, a goaltender who seemed almost indifferent as chaos unfolded around him. While pucks flew and bodies crashed, Dryden stood like the calm eye in hockey's storm, reading the game as though he'd already seen it played before. In a decade defined by fury and fire, he was something else entirely. Intellect in pads, serenity under siege. Dryden wasn't just another goaltender, he was a student of the sport's psychology. Drafted by Montreal, he joined the Canadiens late in the 1970-71 season, and almost out of nowhere backstopped them to a Stanley Cup. A rookie who'd played a handful of games dismantled Chicago's high-powered offense like a chess master, picking apart an impatient rival. Reporters called it a miracle. His teammates called it destiny. But Dryden himself treated it like logic, a matter of angles, anticipation, and awareness. He didn't dive to make saves. He absorbed the game, then erased its chaos with a single, perfect movement. And just when the world crowned him as one of hockey's immortals, he did something no one expected. He walked away. At the height of his power, with championships still to be won, Dryden retired to finish law school. It wasn't injury, it wasn't burnout, it was purpose. How many champions have the courage to step away by choice? His silence thundered louder than any save. Dryden's intellect reshaped the position. He proved that goaltending wasn't just reflex, it was philosophy. With 6 Stanley Cups, 5 Vezina trophies, and a Conn Smythe, his numbers spoke loudly, but his demeanor spoke louder. Younger goalies studied his stillness. Coaches studied his composure, and opponents whispered about his eyes, those steady, unblinking eyes that saw everything before it happened. He studied the game, mastered it, and then walked away from it. But the silence he left behind still echoes through every crease. Number 9, Bobby Clarke. The grin came first, toothless, defiant, unbreakable. It wasn't a smile, it was a warning. When Bobby Clarke skated onto the ice, opponents didn't just see a captain, they saw a storm in human form. The Philadelphia Flyers of the 1970s weren't a hockey team. They were a street gang in skates, an avalanche of fists and fury known as the Broad Street Bullies. And at the center of that chaos stood Clarke, the smallest man on the ice, commanding giants with nothing more than grit, fury, and an indomitable will. He didn't just play the game, he owned it, heartbeat by heartbeat. Clarke's rise wasn't supposed to happen. Diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as a teenager, he was told he'd never survive the physical toll of professional hockey. But Clarke didn't listen. He never listened. He joined the Flyers in 1969, and by the mid-70s, he wasn't just playing, he was conquering. Under his leadership, the Flyers captured back-to-back Stanley Cups in 1974 and 1975, the first expansion team to ever do it. His play wasn't graceful, it was relentless. He'd block a shot with his face, take a stick to the ribs, and still chase down the puck before anyone else moved. Every shift was personal. Every game a war of attrition he refused to lose. But beneath the roar of the crowd and the chaos of the brawls, there was something few ever saw, the fight happening inside him. His blood sugar would crash mid-game. Trainers would find him fainting in locker rooms between periods. He'd take a glucose shot, slap on his helmet, and skate out again like nothing happened. Clarke weaponized his condition, turning it into a secret edge. While others saw fragility, he saw focus. The pain, the exhaustion, the risk, they fueled him. He made his weakness his weapon. Opponents feared his smile because they knew what it meant. No matter how hard you hit him, he was coming back harder. He played with the fire of a man who refused to die twice. His leadership wasn't speeches or slogans, it was example. If Bobby Clarke could bleed and grin in the same breath, what excuse did anyone else have? Bobby Clarke didn't just lead men, he made them believe pain was a privilege. And the next man on this list would make them believe speed could kill. Number 8, Gilbert Perreault, the artist. They couldn't catch. He didn't skate. He floated. Gilbert Perreault glided across the ice like liquid light, each stride smoother than the last. Every move, a brush stroke on a sheet of frozen canvas. In an era when hockey was all bruises, elbows, and chaos, Perreault painted something different, grace. Buffalo had never seen anything like him. The arena lights seemed to dim when the puck touched his stick, as if the game itself paused to watch. Fans didn't just cheer when he played, they held their breath. Because Perreault wasn't simply scoring goals, he was composing symphonies. When he arrived as the Buffalo Sabres' first ever draft pick in 1970, the team was new, raw, untested, but Perreault transformed them overnight into must-watch magic. His partnership with Rick Martin and René Robert, the French connection line, was lightning-bottled in tricolor glass. Together, they turned the Sabres into one of the most exciting offenses of the decade. While others crashed into corners and clawed for control, Perreault weaved through defenders like smoke through fingers. His stick handling wasn't just skill, it was sorcery. His skating wasn't just speed, it was rhythm. The league was filled with brawlers and enforcers, men who lived for contact, but when Perreault came near, something strange happened. They hesitated. Even the toughest defensemen admitted later they couldn't bring themselves to hit him. They'd lunge and he'd vanish, a spin, a shift, a blur, gone. His unpredictability wasn't luck. It was psychological warfare. He made opponents question their own instincts. No one wanted to be the one who ruined a masterpiece in motion. By the end of the decade, Perreault had cemented himself as one of the NHL's most elegant playmakers. Over 300 career points, 8 all-star appearances, and a legacy of artistry that reshaped what offensive hockey could be. He proved that beauty and brutality could coexist, and that finesse could be deadlier than fists. Watching him was a reminder that hockey, at its best, wasn't just about survival. It was about transcendence. They called him the magician, but every illusion he left behind was painfully real. And the next man didn't rely on illusion at all, only unstoppable force. Number 7, Phil Esposito, the man who wouldn't move. The front of the net was hell, chaos, noise, broken sticks, and flying bodies. But right there in the middle of the storm stood Phil Esposito, unshaken and unmovable. Sticks hacked at his legs, elbows dug into his ribs, and defenders shoved with every ounce of their strength. But Esposito didn't flinch. He was a pillar of iron planted in the crease, and the puck always seemed to find him. While others danced around the ice in pursuit of perfection, Esposito turned hockey's ugliest real estate into sacred ground. Before Esposito, goal scorers were artists, snipers from a distance, smooth and agile. But he changed that. He invented what would later be known as net front offense. He wasn't graceful, he wasn't fast, and he didn't need to be. He parked himself inches from the goalie, absorbing punishment, deflecting pucks, and scoring by sheer willpower. The goalie's crease became his home, his battlefield, his throne. Teammates called him fearless. Opponents called him immovable. Every rebound was his, every loose puck a war he refused to lose. In the 1970s, when the Boston Bruins rose to dominance, Esposito's name was carved into every victory. He didn't just score, he commanded the game. But here's the twist most fans forget. Chicago didn't want him. The Blackhawks traded Esposito away in 1967, believing he wasn't fit to be a star. That rejection became his gasoline. In Boston, he erupted into one of the greatest scorers in NHL history. Between 1970 and 1975, he led the league in goals 6 times, shattered records, and redefined what a center could be. He turned humiliation into fuel and transformed the crease into his empire. His rise wasn't just a career, it was a vengeance story written in red and black rubber. Then came the Summit Series in 1972, Canada versus the Soviet Union. When his teammates faltered, it was Esposito who stood in front of cameras, drenched in sweat, begging an entire nation to believe again. His fire, his heart, his voice, they became the pulse of a country. He wasn't just a scorer, he was a symbol of defiance, a man who refused to be moved by failure, fear, or fate itself. He didn't chase greatness, he planted himself in front of it and refused to move. And the next man didn't stand his ground, he flew above it. Number 6, Guy Lafleur, the flower that roared. A flash of gold streaks across the ice, hair flowing, crowd roaring, the Montreal Forum shaking like thunder. In that blur of speed and light, there was only one man it could be, Guy Lafleur. The flower. The nickname sounded gentle, but there was nothing delicate about him. He was the perfect collision of grace and danger, elegance and fury. Every stride looked effortless, every motion electric. When Guy Lafleur touched the puck, the temperature in the arena changed. You could feel it, the anticipation, the chaos waiting to explode. He wasn't just skating, he was performing alchemy, turning motion into music. But with greatness came crushing weight. Guy Lafleur wasn't just another talented forward, he was the heir to Jean Beliveau, the saint of Montreal hockey. The city expected miracles, demanded dominance, and worshipped only perfection. Every shift was under a microscope, every game a trial. He was the chosen one meant to carry the torch of an entire dynasty, the Canadians of the 1970s, the team of gods. But the early years were anything but divine. His rookie seasons were quiet, the sparkle dimmed by pressure. The fans, used to legends, began to turn on him. They booed him, their future hero, for not being great fast enough. The crowd that would one day chant his name once doubted his worth. That sting cut deep, and that's where everything changed. Guy Lafleur transformed the noise into fuel. He shed his helmet, let the golden mane fly, and unleashed his true self. The boos became roars, and Montreal witnessed a metamorphosis. He erupted for 6 straight 50-goal seasons, winning multiple Stanley Cups, Hart trophies, and scoring titles. His trademark slap shot, that laser beam from the right circle, was both poetry and punishment. His speed was beyond physical, it was mythic. Every time he took the puck from his own zone, fans rose to their feet because they knew what was coming. An explosion of brilliance that no defense could contain. Guy Lafleur didn't just play, he elevated. He turned expectation into electricity, pressure into poetry. He bloomed under fire, and every pedal cut like a blade. But the next man didn't just defy gravity, he made it surrender. If you're loving this deep dive into hockey's golden decade, hit that like button and subscribe right now. It helps this video reach more true fans of the game. And tell me in the comments, who's your favorite legend from the 1970s so far? The next names on this list will make you question everything you thought you knew about greatness. Number 5, Bobby Orr, the man who could fly. The image is eternal. Bobby Orr suspended midair, arms raised, body stretched out like a figure in flight. It wasn't just a goal, it was transcendence. That single frame from the 1970 Stanley Cup final became the symbol of an era, a man who refused to stay earthbound. Orr didn't just play hockey, he redefined its limits. Where defensemen once stood guard, he attacked. Where others saw danger, he saw opportunity. Every rush up the ice was a storm of balance, speed, and precision. He was the first to make hockey look effortless, a ballet performed with blades and bruises. Before Orr, defense was about staying back, blocking shots, and protecting the zone, but he broke every rule written before him. He didn't defend from the blue line, he launched from it. With the puck on his stick, he'd glide coast to coast, splitting defenders like they were ghosts, then fire wrist shots with surgical calm. He won 8 straight Norris trophies, 2 Stanley Cups, and even 2 scoring titles as a defenseman. The impossible became routine whenever Orr touched the ice. Fans didn't just cheer, they gasped. Opponents didn't just lose, they watched history happen in real time. But behind the magic was a cruel secret. His knees were disintegrating. The very foundation of his brilliance was crumbling beneath him. Even as he soared, every stride came with pain, every pivot a gamble. By 27, the same legs that made him immortal were betraying him. It was the tragedy of unstoppable talent trapped in a breaking body. Yet he kept skating, kept flying until the very end, because stopping, for Bobby Orr, was worse than pain. He knew the clock was ticking, but he refused to descend quietly. His final years weren't defined by decline, they were defined by defiance. Bobby Orr turned skating into art and courage into science. Every modern defenseman, from Paul Coffey to Cale Makar, still lives in his shadow. His vision, his fearlessness, his grace under fire reshaped the DNA of the sport. He soared when others skated, and when gravity finally caught him, the sport was never the same. But the next man didn't just rewrite the rules, he rewrote the balance of power itself. Number 4, Bobby Hull, the Golden Rebel. The boards trembled, the puck screamed. In a flash of yellow and gold, Bobby Hull tore down the ice like a jet, breaking through the sound barrier. They called him the Golden Jet, not just for his hair or his speed, but because when he moved, you felt the air change. His slap shot was a weapon of myth, clocked at over 118 miles per hour, a blur so violent that goalies sometimes ducked before the puck left his stick. Fans didn't just watch Hull, they braced for him. Every stride was an explosion, every shot a declaration of war. Hull was hockey's first true physical marvel. Built like a sprinter but skating like a storm, he fused raw strength with dazzling finesse. In an era when most forwards played within the system, Hull was the system. Defenders couldn't keep up. He'd fly down the left wing, wind up, and unleash a shot that sounded like thunder cracking through the rafters. He scored over 600 goals in the NHL, and he did it his way, head up, hair flowing, always attacking. But his power wasn't limited to the ice. Off it, Hull was becoming something else, a symbol of resistance in a sport that demanded obedience. Then came his rebellion, the shock that shook hockey to its core. In 1972, Hull did the unthinkable. He left the NHL for the upstart World Hockey Association, the WHA. The NHL called it betrayal. Hull called it freedom. The Winnipeg Jets offered him a then unheard of $1 million contract, and he took it, not just for himself, but for every player who'd been underpaid and silenced by the old guard. That one move detonated the sport's economic structure. Owners were furious, players were inspired, and fans were stunned. Bobby Hull didn't just switch leagues, he broke hockey's chains. His decision changed everything. Player salaries skyrocketed. Contract negotiations became fair fights. The sports business transformed overnight. Hull proved that even in the most rigid of systems, one man could stand up or skate away and force evolution. His rebellion didn't just reshape careers, it redefined control. He wasn't just fast on the ice, he was faster than the establishment could catch. He wasn't just fast, he outran the system itself. And the next man wouldn't just chase numbers, he'd quietly build an empire in the shadows of the stars. Number 3, Marcel Dionne, The Quiet Storm. A single spotlight glows in the dim haze of a Los Angeles arena, far from the frozen heartlands of Montreal or Toronto. There, under the warm California lights, Marcel Dionne skates in silence. No thunderous cheers, no national anthems echoing through packed Canadian arenas, just quiet excellence unfolding beneath the palm trees. While the hockey world looked elsewhere, Dionne was busy rewriting the record books. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, but he was relentless. A metronome of brilliance in a market that barely understood the magnitude of what it had. Dionne wasn't supposed to become a legend. A 5'8" forward drafted second overall in 1971, he lacked the intimidation factor of his peers. Yet his game was built on something rarer, consistency so pure it bordered on supernatural. Game after game, season after season, he racked up goals and assists like clockwork. His skating was explosive, his hands surgical, and his hockey sense nearly psychic. While others relied on highlight reel moments, Dionne built his greatness one quiet shift at a time. Los Angeles wasn't a hockey city then, but for those who paid attention, Dionne made it one. And then came the moment that should have shattered the silence, the 1979-80 season. The year Wayne Gretzky arrived, the year the hockey world turned its eyes to Edmonton's teenage prodigy. But as the cameras worshipped Gretzky's rise, something extraordinary happened. Marcel Dionne outscored him. He finished the season with 137 points to Gretzky's 137, but with more goals, earning the Art Ross Trophy as the NHL's top scorer. The world barely noticed. In any other city, that feat would have made him immortal. In Los Angeles, it was a headline that faded by morning. Dionne didn't complain. He just laced up again and kept producing, season after season, quietly proving that fame and greatness don't always meet. By the end of his career, Dionne had over 1,000 to 1,700 points, 5th all-time when he retired, and yet he was still labeled underrated. But true fans know better. He was hockey's quiet storm, a force that never needed the crowd to roar to leave an impact. They called him underrated, but history remembers him as unavoidable. And the next man wasn't quiet at all, he was a revolutionary with a stick that bent the laws of the game itself. Number 2, Stan Mikita, the genius who bent the game. It began in chaos, swinging sticks, shattered tempers, and the sound of penalties piling up. At the center of it all was Stan Mikita, a fierce competitor with a reputation for anger that burned as hot as his slap shot. In the early 1960s, Mikita was a villain in skates, leading the NHL in penalty minutes as often as he did in scoring. He was reckless, unstoppable, and brilliant, a contradiction that defined the Chicago Blackhawks' wild energy. But something shifted. Somewhere between the scrums and the scowls, Mikita looked in the mirror and saw more than a brawler. He saw a mind capable of reshaping the game itself. The transformation was stunning. Almost overnight, the man who once lived in the penalty box became the league's model of control and precision. He didn't just clean up his play, he elevated it. From chaos, Mikita built clarity. His stick stopped slashing, his passes sharpened, and his skating seemed to move to a rhythm no one else could hear. He won the Hart Trophy as league MVP twice, the Art Ross for scoring twice, and perhaps most tellingly, the Lady Byng Trophy for sportsmanship 2 years in a row. It was as if he'd turned rage into refinement, proving that intelligence could be the deadliest weapon in hockey. Then came the moment that changed everything, a literal twist of genius. During a practice, Mikita accidentally bent the blade of his stick while fixing it. When he took the next shot, the puck exploded off the ice in a wild, unpredictable curve. What began as a fluke became a revolution. Mikita refined the idea, mastering the control of the banana blade. Soon, every forward in the league was experimenting with it. Goalies were terrified. Shots now dipped, rose, and curved in ways that defied physics. The NHL had to step in and limit how much players could curve their sticks, because one man's invention had made scoring too easy. Mikita didn't just adapt to the game, he made the game adapt to him. His legacy wasn't just in points or trophies, but in the way every player after him held their stick, every goal that bent through the air like a question mark. His genius wasn't loud, it was eternal. He didn't just play the game, he reprogrammed its physics. And the next man didn't just play within the game's laws, he became them. Number 1, Gordie Howe, the immortal. The arena falls silent. The crowd doesn't cheer at first, they watch. The doors open, and out steps a man who seems carved from the ice itself. Gordie Howe. The name alone carried the weight of generations. His presence didn't demand attention, it commanded it. There was something timeless in his stride, slow, deliberate, unbreakable. He wasn't just a player, he was an era walking on blades. While others aged, he refused. Decade after decade, he kept coming back, like winter itself, inevitable, unrelenting, eternal. Gordie Howe's legend wasn't built on speed or flash. It was built on endurance, on the terrifying balance between skill and strength. He debuted in 1946 and was still playing professional hockey in the late 1970s. In a sport that devours its own, Howe defied biology. He scored goals, threw elbows, and led locker rooms long after men half his age had retired. His game was pure authority, the perfect blend of brutality and beauty. He could dangle through defensemen, then drop them with a forearm if they got too close. And yet, beneath the grit, there was humility. Fans loved him not just for his ferocity, but for the quiet kindness that followed every collision. He could break your jaw on the ice and shake your hand afterward. Then came the moment that sealed his immortality. In 1980, at 50 years old, Gordie Howe played in his final NHL All-Star game alongside a rookie named Wayne Gretzky. The past and the future of hockey sharing the same sheet of ice. When the puck dropped, time itself seemed to pause. Howe skated with the same determination he had 30 years before, still hitting, still scoring, still smiling. It wasn't just a game, it was a passing of the torch between gods. The league wasn't watching a farewell, it was witnessing the merging of generations in a single heartbeat. Howe's career remains almost impossible to believe. 26 NHL seasons, over 800 goals, and a reputation so legendary that the Gordie Howe hat trick, as were a goal, an assist, and a fight, became hockey scripture. He embodied everything the sport aspired to be. Skill without arrogance, toughness without cruelty, greatness without vanity. He didn't belong to a decade, he belonged to time itself. And though the ice melts, the echo of Gordie Howe's skates never fades. 10 men, 10 forces of nature. They didn't just play hockey, they defined it. From Ken Dryden's stillness, to Bobby Clarke's fury, from Perreault's artistry, to Orr's flight. Every one of them carved their legacy into the frozen surface of the 1970s. They were more than players. They were myth makers, bridging the sport's rough, blood-soaked past with its fast, modern future. The 70s weren't just a decade of change, they were a crucible, melting together brilliance and brutality to forge legends that still echo through every arena today. What connects them all isn't just greatness, it's defiance. They stood when others fell, fought when others folded, and changed the game when it dared to limit them. These were the men who taught hockey how to dream, how to rage, and how to endure. So, which of these warriors defined the 1970s for you? Drop your pick in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe. Because next time, we're diving into the most unstoppable NHL teams of all time. The war on ice never truly ends, it just finds new heroes. If this countdown reminded you why hockey in the 70s was pure chaos and beauty, show your support. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that keep the fire of the game alive. Ring that bell so you don't miss the next episode, because next time, we're breaking down the most unstoppable NHL teams of all time. The legends may fade, but the ice remembers.